envision three female attorneys coming together to have our voices heard. Each of us would have different opinions, different passions, different backgrounds, and different views. Although we are different and unique, we are able to come together to discuss our experiences, navigating through the legal profession and this thing called life. Now, the vision has come alive, and we invite you each and every week to listen to us as we talk about what's trending in the news and our legal insight, tackle real-life issues that affect not only us as attorneys, but us as women of color. Disclaimer: this podcast is intended to provide entertainment and general information. The information provided and the views given are not intended to constitute legal advice and should not be relied upon as legal representation. All views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever we are affiliated with now or will be affiliated with in the future. Hi guys, it's your girl Brandy, and welcome to another episode of No Further Questions. I hope everybody had a good weekend, a good week, and I hope they have a good week coming up. We are back to discuss I call it the trial of the year. A guilty verdict just came out, so we're here to discuss. But before we get started, I got sidetracked. Let me have my girls reintroduce themselves. T. Hutch.
Hi, it's Turia. It's Monday. Life is good. No complaints.
Sam Fraze.
Hi guys, it's Sam Fraze, and I'm excited to hear from our guest on this. What did you say? Case of the
case of the year. Okay. I don't know if the century yet. We still got some time. Okay. So I call it the case of the year. So, yes, we have really great, exciting guests on our show. We have one of our favorite lawyers that's a friend of the show. I call him QB, but let me have him reintroduce himself. Mr. Brooker, reintroduce yourself to our audience.
Certainly. Good evening. My name is Quentin Brooker. I am glad to be back on the No Further Questions podcast. Excited about the topic that we have for today. Ladies, thank you for re-inviting me to the show. And let's get it cracking. Let's go.
That's what's up. And Miss Shonda Parker, please introduce yourself to our audience. You are a new guest to our show. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. My name is Shonda Parker. I am a former prosecutor and current defense lawyer here in the Houston, Texas area. And I'm so excited to be on the show with you guys to talk about this case.
Well, thank you. I didn't know you were a former prosecutor. That's awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can probably bring some of that insight, too, to the show, too. Well, as we all know, we all were glued to our TVs. What was it, Thursday? Wednesday or Thursday? We were all glued waiting on that verdict to come down from the Derek Chauvin trial. And so that's what we want to talk about. It's been in the news. It's a historic decision. And as we all know, the verdict was guilty. So we want to talk about it. We want to dive in. We have two great criminal defense attorneys in the Houston area to bring in their insight. So like Quentin said, let's get started and let's get cracking. My first question, and I'm going to get straight into it. And Sam had brought this up off air too, and this goes for both of y'all. I'm going to start with Shonda. As a defense attorney, would you have taken this case? I'm going to go to that question. Would you have taken this case? If he came to you and you saw the video, of course you saw the video, and he came to you and said, I need representation, would you take this case?
To be honest with you, no. It would have to be a whole lot of money. But on top of that, though, we also owe our clients a duty to zealously advocate for them. And if I have a belief or position that prevents me from being able to do that, I can't ethically take his case. And to be honest, I obviously, as a Black woman and a mother of two Black sons, I have a big problem with this case and with what he did. So I don't think that I would have ethically been able to represent him regardless of how much money he gave me.
Quentin, would you have taken the case?
It would have been really tough. I would be inclined not to take a case like this, not because it was on video. I mean, we've had tough cases where we've had to represent defendants that appear guilty, but it's so racially charged. and it just felt so hateful and so personal. I don't believe that there was any amount of money that I could have taken to represent Derek Chauvin in this case as well. But I would like to talk about, if we had to, what we'd like to do, because I think there were some interesting nuggets in there that we can probably all relate to. But in terms of from a professional standpoint, I don't know. I mean, that man, he utterly disgusts me. So from a personal standpoint, no, there's no way I could represent Derek Chauvin.
So then let's segue into that, because if you would have, hypothetically, if you were the defense attorney for Derek Chauvin, what would you have done?
Yeah, the first thing I look at are the charges. And in Minnesota, of course, you know, I'm not a Minnesota licensed attorney, but I did take a look at those charges, and I would have stuck to the language of those charges and focused on trying to negate at least one element of those charges. And to be quite honest with you, I did not like the position that defense took. I thought it was, and I watched a significant part of the trial. Didn't see it all, but saw probably 90% of it. There were arguments that were made that I would not have made. I would have simply attacked the statute itself, and I would have relied on the fact that Derek Chauvin was a police officer and he was in the midst of doing his job. And I think that always gives people some hesitation and pause when you're questioning the use of deadly force or strong force. Was the officer doing their job? So I would have taken that position, that this officer was doing his job. Even if it wasn't strictly a policy, these are things that have been done in the past. These are things that were necessary to make an arrest. And that's the way I would have went with it. I thought it was a lot of opportunity there that was missed by defense counsel. I believe his name is Eric Nelson. I believe he missed some opportunities with that.
So do you think, well, I know you don't know them personally, but in your experience, why do you think they probably didn't go through that way? Like, why didn't they probably take it that way versus the strategy that they did for the trial?
Well, whenever you have a defendant that has some issues, understand that Mr. Floyd had some drug use. He maybe even had a criminal history, I understand. Those are things that you're afraid of as a defense attorney, because you believe that although it may not be directly admissible, it could somehow be implied in the facts, implied through the testimony. I mean, there was some discussion and some evidence about drugs being located in the vehicle and things of that nature. The people that he were with, at least one of the gentlemen had a criminal history and was found with some contraband on him, and they found contraband in the vehicle. So those types of facts lead you to believe that perhaps you don't have a traditional defense, and that now you have to find some extravagant or some extraordinary fact that could help you. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the enlarged heart. I didn't like the carbon monoxide fumes. I thought they were too unbelievable. He could have simply struck with the point that Chauvin was doing his job, and this is the way that they do it. And that from his standpoint, he believed that Mr. Floyd was not complying with the arrest, and that he wasn't intending to commit any aggravating assault, because I believe that was an underlying factor in one of the charges, that it had to be an aggravated assault. He wasn't trying to commit an aggravated assault. He was simply attempting to make an arrest. I would have stuck with that, and I think that would have been more plausible.
Shonda, you want to piggyback on that?
I do. Let me first, throw this out there before I even say anything. I will say that this was one of those cases that, as an attorney, you want to watch, because, everybody's going to talk about it. Everybody's going to be asking you questions about it. Like, they're going to be like, what would you do? What do you think? And so, to be honest, I started trying to watch the trial, and I was just like, I can't. Like, this is a lot. This is very triggering. I just can't do it. Let me just watch the recaps if I can. And even some of those were very emotional. But the things that I did see of the trial, and also, we're busy. We don't have time to sit up and watch the TV, 8 hours a day on a trial, when we need to be focused on our trials and whatever we need to do to make our money. But anyway, so the things that I did see that I didn't appreciate from the defense attorney in this case was, it just felt like he had the spaghetti method, where you just kind of take that pot of spaghetti and throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. And I think that because of that, he was all over the place. Like he said, you got the enlarged heart, you got carbon monoxide, you've got the drug ingestion, all of those things that he just kept trying to throw out there, rather than maybe sticking with one or two potential theories and driving those points home. to get them to see like, hey, this is reasonable, and this is the reason why you should doubt what the state is saying. And if you don't do that, you get a guilty verdict, as you did in this case.
Yeah.
I do want to throw this disclaimer out there for our listeners. None of us are licensed in Minnesota to practice in Minnesota. So I just want to make sure that the thoughts and views that we're discussing is based on mostly Texas law. And so we are not licensed in Minnesota. So we're just having a conversation about the trial, about the criminal justice system as a whole. But a lot of it is also based on Texas as well. So I just want to throw that out there.
Can I ask a question? Do either of you think the video played into this idea of the defense attorney having to kind of grapple and pull out of thin air as to these different arguments? I mean, that's one thing that kept coming up when I would watch the commentary was there's never been this kind of footage, right? To just show play by play what's going on. I mean, as many times as the video was shown from the prosecution side, when you get to the defense side, what else do you need to do? You have this video here. So do you think that the video itself played into the roles as to, you know, where do you go from now as a defense attorney?
I guess
I do.
I think that I agree. I do think that that's part of it. Like, hey, I mean, what can we do? But I also feel like that's part of the brainstorming process when you're, you know, creating your strategy for a case, right? You know, everybody in the world watched this video. So if you already see this ahead of time and you take on this case, at some point you have to sit down and say, okay, this is a bad fact, a really, really bad fact that we have to kind of inoculate. And what can we do? And I don't necessarily believe that a spaghetti, you know, noodle method, whatever you want to call it, is the best way to do that. Because like you said, it just felt like he was kind of grasping at straws. I think it should have been a more targeted strategy for defending, you know, that reasonable doubt or putting out that reasonable doubt that he should have been doing in that case.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the video definitely put fear in the defense in their theory, and it made them feel like they had to try anything. I didn't feel that way. I mean, you got to understand, you know, this is a killing by a police officer. And police officers have state-sanctioned authority to use deadly force under certain circumstances. Now, we know that this wasn't your traditional way that we see police use deadly force, but again, it's an officer. And so you tend to give an officer the opportunity to explain. And I just believe that was a big missed opportunity. Now, sure enough, the entire Minnesota Police Department seemed to be against Derek Chauvin at this point. I mean, you had the chief of police, you had everybody came in and said that what he did was wrong. But I just thought that there was an opportunity to say, well, you know what? This is how we do it. Sort of like a course of performance argument. This is not unusual in what we do. We come across dangerous people all the time. And we didn't know what he was going to do. This was a large black man. Now, I think I heard them say in the trial that Derek Chauvin was something like 160 some pounds. He was a smaller guy. And, you know, George Floyd was an athlete. Even at his age, I believe his girlfriend testified that he worked out a lot. He ran, he played every kind of sport. He was a big, strong man. So I just believe that an argument could have been made that, hey, man, we were trying to keep this man subdued. And it got unfortunate. We were concerned about the crowd. We were distracted and things just kind of got out of hand. So, yeah, I think the video played a huge part and really had Mr. Nelson just all over the place.
You're on mute, Sam.
I have a follow-up question because I did hear a lot that people were saying the difference in this was the video. But we've seen, this is not the first video of a police officer killing an unarmed Black individual. I mean, we have Philando Castro, we have Eric Garner, we even have some, I don't know if we have actual video footage, but at least sound of some police officers killing young unarmed Black children. So what do you think, if any, you know, as a criminal defense attorney, you present to juries a lot, what was different about this video, if anything?
I want to answer that first as a prosecutor. So to get this case as a prosecutor, obviously it's a heavy case, but the video was golden. This is, for people who are, just listening to the podcast and not, actually viewing it, like rubs hands like Birdman, like, oh my God, because it was so much on his face that he didn't care about this man's life, which I think really drove home the point. And, I did get a chance to listen to the opening statement, and the prosecutor did a great job of talking about use of force and how it has to be objectively reasonable and how he didn't let up or get up. And he didn't. And he drove those points home and showed that, and the video even shows there's people that are trying to intervene and say, hey, he needs help, whatever. There are people that are, just trying to get this man some help, because law enforcement, their excuse is always, oh, well, they said they couldn't breathe, but if you couldn't breathe, you wouldn't be talking. Like, and I have, a background, I guess you can say, in law enforcement. I worked in law enforcement before I became a prosecutor, before I went to law school, and then afterwards for a little bit. So I know their mentality, and that's what they say all the time. Well, I mean, obviously he could breathe because he was talking. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, obviously we see that that's not the case. And so, like I said, so from a prosecutor perspective, I think that it was great. I think that it was the video that showed Chauvin's face, his reactions, his disregard for people that were trying to render aid to this man who was literally dying on the ground. I think that was what pushed this over. It wasn't necessarily that we had video. It wasn't necessarily that we just had video or that we had audio or whatever. It was, we were able to objectively stand back and see that this man was acting with disregard for his life.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was the distinction of video. We've had video like Philando Castile, as you mentioned, but it wasn't great quality. We've had video in other cases, but this video was distinct in that the quality of the video, the vantage points, various vantage points, all four officers, the young lady that recorded it, several different perspectives. So we got to see people like live and in living color. We got to see the emotion. We got to hear them talk. It was like being there. And, I shared with someone else last week that I feel like I watched George Floyd die 3 dozen times because I did. Mm-hmm. And that tends to have an emotional effect on you as well. It's extremely draining. I even would argue that it's traumatizing to me as a Black man, and even to our people that experience these things or that have young children or brothers or uncles or whatever. Everybody could feel the emotion as a result of the video. And to me, that was really the difference. This was really putting you in front of the cup food store. So some other videos that we've seen, we see it and it's bad and it's terrible. But this one was different for me. It felt like 4-dimensional witnessing. And that was really hard for the defense to overcome.
Do you think at any point the defense could have had objected to the video or tried to get it thrown out?
I'm sure that they did. I'm sure that they did try to say that it was, more prejudicial. But, like I said, I didn't watch it play by play, but I'm sure that they did. If they didn't, then that would be, another reason why this would be an appealable case. It's, part of the error. But that was one of those things, like you had to show it because, it's evidence of the crime. And any video is going to be, prejudicial, but it obviously was not more probative in this case. Or excuse me, it was more probative than prejudicial. So, that's why they had to let it in.
Do you think Chauvin really did receive a fair trial?
I do.
Quentin, you think he received a fair trial?
Yeah. I mean, what didn't he receive? He got 2 weeks in front of the court. He had a jury. He had a ton of money to use on experts and the counsel of his choice. This was not an appointed case where someone was forced on him. He had the opportunity to testify if that's something that he wanted to do. So what about it was unfair? I mean, it was unfortunate timing for him in the sense that there were some other things going on or that occurred during the trial. And you have some people that you have the world watching. But, Derek Chauvin put himself in Derek Chauvin's position. So I mean, he got exactly what he deserved. Well, at minimum. We'll see. We'll see in about
Right.
8
Right.
We
weeks.
still got
If he
8.
gets,
We got
Yeah,
8
we-
weeks to see what the sentencing gonna do.
we got another few weeks to see
Yeah.
if he gets exactly what he deserves. But no, I don't see anything that was unfair about this trial. This judge, to me, was extremely professional, made most of the correct rulings. What more do you want? You killed somebody, so now you got to deal with the consequences.
And one thing that they talked about on the 60-minute presentation last night, which I thought was interesting, they asked the prosecutor basically, what was your position? Did you think that he received a fair trial, and why would he even go to trial? And he said history was on his side. If he were to go off of what has been done in the past, he was on the side of history. So
Correct.
if you were not an African American and you were in his position, why would you not go to trial?
Right.
Right. But I also want to talk about that as well. Like, so I know I've heard that a lot of people are saying, oh, well, they weren't granted a change of venue, and that's part of the reason why the trial was unfair. But for anybody that's not an attorney that's listening to this, I mean, there are ways that attorneys go through and try to make sure that they are getting impartial jurors. I mean, that whole voir dire process, I don't know how long it took in this case, but I mean, they went through for a while to make sure that they could find people that said that they would be impartial and follow the law. And so that's part of, one way of ensuring a fair trial. So I don't necessarily think that denying a change of venue is an issue in this case. But then additionally, like with the situation that happened with the shooting and all of that, I mean, there was nothing else that could have been done, I think, other than maybe sequestering the jury prior to the verdict being, for the case going to them to decide. I don't know what else they could have done to keep them from, being influenced from the outside.
The only thing that could have been done, it would have been something extraordinary. I mean, I think getting a change of venue is fairly significant. I mean, you have to have some very, very prejudicial facts that show that you deserve a change of venue. So I don't think that he had enough there. Just the fact that there were some people there that would have been against you, that's not enough to get venue changed. Just because it's not a good forum for you, that doesn't rise to the level of change of venue. Yeah, you committed a crime in that jurisdiction, so you got to deal with it in that jurisdiction. I mean, that's what happened. But I'm gonna tell you, I understand that Mr. Chauvin attempted a plea bargain, and the Department of Justice put the kibosh on it. Is what I read. I read that immediately after the trial, that there was a plea deal that Mr. Nelson attempted to enter into, but it was the federal Department of Justice that I guess they insinuated that they would move forward with hate. We talked about hate crimes, or I believe we're supposed to, that they were going to move forward with some sort of hate crime prosecution against him. And as a result, he decided to go to trial. So other than that, I mean, I think that's messed up. If that happened, then you might have something there. But he's not entitled to a change of venue because he wants to. Hey, man, you were at Cup Foods when this man was killed, so you ought to try your case in that county. Those are the citizens of that county, so that's where you need to be.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Quentin, because I did read that the DOJ, because he was convicted on this crime, they're now looking into some other misconduct that he has done that has led to convictions of, I think, like a 14-year-old young man. And so the DOJ is actually looking into that crime, saying that he possibly could have committed misconduct, because I think that the family or the young boy did file a complaint against him.
Yeah, they're looking at him. I mean, this thing was worldwide, so that doesn't shock me at all. Doesn't surprise me at all. And just the callousness of how it appeared that he just literally didn't care about this man's life. And maybe they want to make an example. I don't know.
Before we go on,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to ask real quick. Can either of you talk about sequestering a jury? Because I think when the question you talk about fair trial, not only are you looking at it from the change of venue, but should the jury have been sequestered to take out the outside noise that was all around? I mean, everybody had an opinion as to this case, and each night these different jurors got to go home, go to their own house, and probably talk to people who had an opinion as to what was going on. What happens, or who gets to decide whether or not a jury is sequestered?
Mr. Brooker, do you want to answer that?
Ultimately, it's the judge. And in this case, Mr. Nelson did move for sequestering early. I believe at some point this jury was sequestered. But he had moved for sequestering early, right after Officer Potter committed another killing. He had moved for sequestering, and it was denied. And then he moved for a mistrial, and that was denied. So at that point, Mr. Nelson had done everything he could do. Mm-hmm. But no, ultimately, it's the judge that's going to decide whether sequestering is necessary or it should apply in a case like this. And he found that it should. Now, sometimes, because I'm inherently suspicious of this system, I don't know if that was a setup for an appeal. I don't know.
I'm going to say the same thing. So,
go ahead. Go ahead, Counsel.
I think that, sequestration is an extraordinary remedy, right? So, jurors take an oath and they say that they're not going to allow, any outside influence. They won't talk to anybody about the case. They're admonished about that every time that they, recess for the day. And so on one level, you have to be able to say, okay, we are going to take our jurors at their word that they're going to follow the law and follow the instructions given to them by the court. But on the other hand, it also seems as though with such a high profile case, with so much going on around it, that in order to not give fuel to the fire of an appeal, that they would have just gone ahead and taken those extraordinary remedies to make sure that this would be an untouchable, I guess you can say, verdict in this case. So yeah, I'm also very suspicious about some of the things that they did that I think that they probably should have granted instead of waiting maybe until the last minute to do that for them.
So we've been talking about this word for a while, and we've been talking about the process a little bit. Y'all been touching on it with the appeals process. Let's go into that, because by not having the jury sequestered, by him not getting the change of venue, and then, it's also been said that, we also know that Representative Maxine Waters made her comment that some people have thought that may have influenced or could have, influenced the juries if they have heard it when another killing, officer killing, was done at during the time they were deliberating. So let's talk about the appeals. And again, I know we're not in Minnesota, and this is, on a Texas base, but what are some of the things that, because we know he's going to file an appeal. He's entitled to file an appeal. We know that's going to happen. So what are some things that could possibly be in his appeal?
I would say that it would have to be, anybody that actually watched the trial, there are going to be things that, as lawyers, if you watched it, that may stick out to you, such as, not preserving the record, not preserving error on the record during the trial. I would imagine that at
what
some
does that
point
mean?
He's going to. So if there are things that the defense attorney should have objected to and didn't object to them, things that should not have been allowed in at the trial and he didn't object, or, rulings that the judge may have made that he disagreed with, but he did not continue to press the issue or get them on the record. There may obviously be those issues there. But then, of course, you also have, like we discussed, maybe the decision not to sequester the jury, any type of outside influence that may have been put onto them. Those things can come up for appeal. But I don't know that it is going to disturb the verdict at the end of it unless there was some sort of egregious errors that happened during the trial itself.
Because one of the statements with what Maxine Waters said, I know a lot of people have thought that her statement could have influenced the jury. Could influence the verdict. So isn't it, like we're explaining to our audience, a lot of our layman person, that just because she said something, as long as if one of the jurors have actually heard it and used it to influence their decision, her statement would, I guess, go towards an appeal, correct?
Yes. And ironically, the judge admonished admonished her during the trial, which also was interesting to me. He made a big deal about that, about the fact that public officials were speaking on the trial and shouldn't have. It was highly inappropriate. And they need to leave the judicial branch alone as they do their thing. So to me, I think that could, if there's going to be a basis for appeal, that's going to be one of the main issues, is the sequestering issue, because Eric Nelson did request it. I don't know if he requested it in what I would consider a timely manner, but he did request it. It was denied, and then he requested it again, and ultimately it was granted. So I believe that it's not what she said so much as the combination of things. The fact that, this woman, she made the public statement. This is a highly charged case. It is an international, worldwide case. It's black versus white, so to speak. It's all of those factors together that will bring forward something to discuss on appeal. And I would be surprised if it doesn't make it to our highest court, to be honest with you. Not many criminal cases get to the Supreme Court, but this is one that I think the Supreme Court might take a look at because it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, and I haven't read an opinion on the question of sequestering. I can't even remember one that has gone that high. So it's a case that I would not be surprised if it went high, but it's definitely going to be one of the main points of appeal, whether or not the judge erred in denying the motion to sequester.
That bothered me. I will say that the judge mentioned, because I will be honest, I was in and out of the case. I did not know that Maxine Waters had said anything until the judge made a comment about her comment.
Same
which,
here.
if I were a juror, after you didn't sequester them, would then make me want to inquire what she said. So
Exactly.
that bothered me a lot, because I feel like, as not only as an officer of the court, but as the judge the presiding judge over this case, you made it political by bringing in facts that were not in front of the court, that were not in front of the jury. And you, to me, took a political stance, in my opinion.
But was that the worst statement made by the politicians? I had one where I thought that the president shouldn't have made any statements. So I had bigger issues with the president of the United States making a comment than Maxine Waters making a comment. And so to me, if I was going to cringe over one of the politicians talking, it was the president of the United States saying anything about this case. And so I wonder, could his statements cause problems?
I wasn't even cringing about the politicians making their statements. They're going to say what they need to say to be reelected. But when you have a judge putting a magnifying glass, I mean, we're all attorneys, whether we practice criminal law or not. Imagine being in court and the judge saying, you know what President Trump said today when he was the president? Like, to me, when you preside over a trial, you are supposed to show impartiality, unbiased. And if it's not something that has been affecting the trial, then it shouldn't be addressed, right? Like, even in the O.J. Simpson trial, right, which was the trial of the century, the judge was very impartial in instructing the jurors not to use outside influences, but he didn't state what this politician said or what this person said. To me, I felt that the presiding judge was highly unprofessional, and to me, I would call into question that judge, because I feel like that was a magnifying glass. Like, you were basically handing him a reason to appeal.
So
any good appellate judge, any good appellate lawyer is going to utilize that. I don't think it's going to be enough, though. I don't know if they can make a strong argument that Maxine Waters influenced the jury to the degree where they convicted Derek Chauvin. I just don't think so. But any good appellate lawyer would definitely utilize it as an argument.
Definitely, I agree with that.
I do want to switch to the civil side, and this is for our civil attorney on our panel, our co-host. So, Taria, being a civil attorney, we know that the family sued the city and received a settlement. In your experience, can you touch briefly about that? Like, what does that mean in regards to that? I think they received, what, 72 million maybe? I'm not for sure, like the exact numbers. I'm not for sure. You're on mute.
I wanted to say it was like 27.
Oh, okay, so I'm giving them
They
72
received-
million.
let's say it this way: they received more than $1 million, less than $1 billion, for this. So I think in similar cases like this, the criminal side of things always kind of makes the media, but in the background, there's always the civil side of things that is also playing in part. And for criminal side, it's who's going to get convicted and will there be jail time. From the civil side is, did someone or some entity do something that was so negligent and egregious that the civil should be found liable for it? In a case like this, if you're on the civil side, you can't go after the police officers because of immunity. Now, I practice in Texas, so the immunity laws are crazy here. I don't really know how they are in Minnesota, but you can always go after the city as well. And so that's what they did here. They filed a suit against the city saying that, the city had a duty to protect its citizens, and it didn't, due to the actions of this police officer. And in turn, they filed a lawsuit. It did not go to trial. It was settled outside of the courts for an amount above $1 million, but below $1 billion. So that's what happened in this case. And it's all cases, I think majority of the criminal cases that we've talked about or that we've heard about, case of the century, even with OJ. OJ was found not guilty, but there was a civil case brought against him. So most of these cases, there are the other side, which is the money side of things. And this case is no different. And the city, after looking at all the evidence and seeing the videos and looking at it from all the angles, they clearly thought that there was a problem, and hence why this is probably, I think, one of the largest settlements against the city for a police murder or brutality or crime in history. So there's not many more that tops this amount of money.
Taria, I did have a follow-up question, because uniquely you see where the civil lawyers normally wait, like they don't settle until they get that criminal conviction. As a civil lawyer, do you think that there was a reason why they went ahead and said, you know what, we'll just go ahead and settle this for a small fee, of course,
Right.
and we'll let the criminal trial play out?
Absolutely. I think, I don't know if it was the prosecutor, one of the prosecutors who said they didn't expect a guilty verdict until they received the guilty verdict, right? So no one thought that he was going to get a conviction. No one did. As many times that they showed the video, as Quentin said, as many times as the angles that we watched it, as many times as you saw George Floyd die, I think no one really thought that he was going to get a conviction. Even he didn't think it. He was shocked. He sat there too, like,
his facial expression over that mask.
Right.
I saw that.
He was like, "Oh, so this is what we doing?" Okay.
He was shocked.
And I think he even, if you watch him, people are like, he'd have no emotion. No, there was emotion. He was processing, like, wait, did they give me an offer?
Yeah, I saw them eyes.
From a civil side of things, I thought it was smart. I thought it was excellent move on their parts. Whoever the civil attorneys did a great job. A lot of times from a civil side, sometimes we thought of as the greedy ones, and we're trying to plot how do we get the most money, and is the bang for the buck to go to trial and sit for another jury. But in this case, it was smart. You do have the video, right? You do have the body cams that show the exact same thing. This is going to be a case that there's problems. There's social media issues that are going on. Everybody's watching. Let's get in and out as possible. And if we can convince the family to take this amount of money, which was great money, And even if they probably wanted more, and a lot of times from the civil side, they always want more money, they were able to tell them and convince them, hey, take this money now. You don't need your day in court. This is your day in court. Accept the payment and move on with your life.
This
And
is
that's
your
a
best
harsh
day in court.
So then the
I mean, to some extent, yeah, right.
So the $27 million, who does it go to? Because he has a large family. Is it going to like one particular person? Is there like an administrator over the money? Like, and then do you, and also just kind of fall back from a civil side, when is that money dispersed, or how is it dispersed? Is it like you get that lump sum tomorrow?
It depends on how they have everything set up. I would hope that there is an estate set up. And if it's set up for the child, it depends on who brought the lawsuit, how was the lawsuit filed. If it's filed on behalf of, his child, if it's for the minor, it goes in. But that's all dealt with on the back end. Trust and believe. In a case like this is a case that I would love to have, because then I can go retire. If all we're worried about at the end is who gets what money and how the checks are split, we'll worry about that at the end. We can deal with that for the next 9 months. We don't care about that part. We care about convincing clients to take the money. And this is going to be, as Sam said, this is your best day. You don't need to sit before a jury. And a lot of people want justice, and justice to them is telling their story in front of a jury. And from the civil side, a lot of times you don't need that, because the jury is so unpredictable and you don't know until the verdict is read. And that is the scary part of juries.
But the family lawyer in us, you know what I was thinking? I was like, that girlfriend,
yes,
she's gonna be mad because she ain't entitled to no money.
That's
she
what I was thinking too. You were
so
not
she
a wife.
is not entitled to any of that $27 million. So
unless they
I
nice
wonder
to
if
her.
that's gonna be an issue. But going back to Shonda, I had a question in regards to if you're on the prosecutor side, because I think Ben Crump did an excellent job as a civil lawyer coming out in the beginning, leading with prayer, but also letting people know, they got the 27 million.
Yeah.
However, that's not justice.
Right.
That doesn't, he still needs to be held accountable for his actions. How important from a prosecutorial standpoint do you think that is? Because I really thought that a lot of people were going to say, well, the family's already been compensated. So, whether he goes to jail or not really doesn't matter.
I think that when we have cases like this, we have to start to think about what justice actually means, right? And so, sure, the family has been compensated for the loss, but as society, what is society's justice, right? So if we have a police officer that kills a man on video with no remorse or regard for his life at all, and he does not get convicted, what does that do to society? What does that tell our citizens that they are, that they are supposed to be serving, right? If they come across another George Floyd, and that person knows in the back of their mind, like the old man that was the witness, and he was like, I kept telling him, we can't win. Like that's how a lot of us feel, right? And so this would have been the nail in the coffin. Like society, we Black people feel that we still can't win. We have a video of a man being murdered and his life leaving from his body, and he's not, and that the murderer is not convicted. What is that saying to us? Because, we're only, they can only govern us with our consent. And if we feel like we're a target and there's no accountability for someone murdering us or brutalizing us, then we're going to not give that consent to be governed anymore, right? Now we're going to have some issues. Now we're like, you just showed us that we don't mean anything. So now that's where I think the justice came from. I think that's the part that had to be driven home, is that this is, as much as this is about George Floyd and his family, this is also a lot about our society as a whole, because the whole world was watching this. And that's one of the reasons why I say, you know what, I appreciate this verdict. I'm glad that it happened, but I don't think it's that stepping stone or that leap forward that everybody thinks that it is. I think this was one of those things that we're grateful for it, but it's not what we think is happening. It's not that actual racial justice and overhaul of the policing system that some people are trying to make it out to be.
And also to that point, we don't have a sentence yet.
Right.
I keep reminding folks.
I was
I
going to say
believe
that.
he's facing, as the charges stand right now, I understand that the statute to read that he's looking at 150 months or 12 and a half years, unless they find aggravating factors, such as the fact that there was a death that was committed in front of a child, that can at that point take it up to 30 years. But if the judge doesn't find those aggravating factors, he could do 12 and a half years. And I don't think anybody would be pleased with that. So, no, I certainly agree that this is not an earth-shattering verdict. This is what was supposed to happen anyway.
Right.
The man was killed. We all saw it. Clearly, this man had a depraved mind when he committed this killing. This is not earth-shattering to criminal justice or reform to the criminal justice system as it relates to Black people at all. So I think I was relieved was the feeling that I had. It was more relief than satisfaction or some inspiration or some hope that things are going to improve. But certainly it was the right verdict for sure. And I think the other side or the other group of people that we don't really talk about are the people that live in this county. They deserve that verdict as well. Certainly George Floyd's family deserved it, but the people that live in that county, they deserve that verdict. They have to live there. They have to coincide with these people. And then during the trial, you have Officer Potter, who's a 26-year veteran, a training officer, doing training on that morning, killing a 20-year-old boy, saying that she made a mistake. So again, this is important also for that community, but it doesn't make for any substantial change in the racial dynamics of what we deal with as a people as it relates to the criminal system.
But do you think that it gives at least a starting point for a sense of hope? Here's the reason why I asked that. Because I feel at least, at the very minimum, one police officer will think twice that he could be convicted of murder and could be held accountable. And does he really want to roll that dice? We've seen so many people walk away with nothing. And I'm not saying that it means that it's changing the world, but at least to me, it made some police officers think twice.
I know that Attorney Parker says she worked in law enforcement in some capacity, but I'll just speak to this quickly, and I would love to hear her opinion about this. I believe that law enforcement has such a deep history in the way in which it trains and deals with folks, particularly people that look like me, that no, it's not going to make for a change. Now, is one officer going to think twice? I think that if Officer Potter didn't kill that boy during this trial, I may believe that could be possible.
Right.
I just do not believe that an officer is going to go against their training, because they're trained to use deadly force in a situation where they feel like it's necessary. They get to make that decision. They're the ones that get to make that call while they're out there. And that's not only training, but it's a deep culture within law enforcement. This is what they're trained to do. If they believe that there's an objective reason to use deadly force, they're going to use deadly force. And by and large, they've never been checked on this. So to me, no, I don't think that it's going to, is somebody going to think differently? Maybe one or two officers, but by and large, no, it's not going to make much of a difference.
I mean, just recently too, I saw the news, a guy in Ohio was just shot 10 to 12 times, just after the verdict. So, I mean, I agree with Glennon, no. But
yeah, I think that's the same. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to defer to you.
Yeah, so I think that is kind of what we're saying, right? Like, it's not this overhaul of the system. That shooting happened, in my opinion, to kind of like bring us back, like, it's not what you think this is.
Don't get
Be
comfortable.
real. They're still out here killing us. So, that's number one. Number two is, the way that when I've talked to some officers, I was a criminal intelligence analyst for several years. I worked on state, federal, local, with all levels of law enforcement. So I kind of know their mindset, right? And one of the reasons why I was like, listen, I can't be an agent because I'm coming home. And so that's the mindset that they have. It's me or it's them. and I got babies at home. And so I'm going to do what I need to do to go home. And that's some of them. And some of them are just like, I have a badge. So whatever I do, I can do. You know what I'm saying? And so the ones that feel like, okay, I need to rethink my actions, or I need to, kind of consider what's the situation, or this may be some consequences down the line. Those are not the ones that needed to be reached. Those are the good ones. Those are the ones that are like, hey, let me make sure I'm doing the right thing. The ones that needed to be reached are the ones that feel like, I can't talk to, one of the officers told me at HPD, he said, I can't talk to the people in Third Ward the same way I talk to the people in River Oaks.
Right.
Because they're not going to respect me in Third Ward if I go and say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, or whatever, the same way they do in River Oaks. I said, but you haven't tried it. You know what I'm saying? When you treat people with respect, you're going to get respect, it. Yeah. But, and so some of them have that mentality that we're a threat, that we're a danger. And so they're going to always have that. That's that implicit bias that this is not going to change. So, I don't think that that's, an issue at all. I don't think it's going to make that change that needs to happen as far as policing.
So then why does the trial matter? Why does it even matter? If it's not going to change anything, if nothing is going to happen, if they're still going to kill us, why is it even important? Because I can guarantee you this. They got 27 million because they knew it was going to cost more than that to rebuild the city once, like if they didn't get anything and if it was a not guilty. So it's kind of like, I get both sides, right? But it's kind of like, well, we want this accountability, but then when it happens, we say, well, it really doesn't matter. They're still going to do what they want to do.
No, and I want to say this. I don't want people to feel like we don't have hope. If you wanted to take hope from this, that's great. But it's not necessarily, I didn't take hope from this situation. My reaction was more of the relief, that Quinion had. Like, I'm glad that we don't have a whole bunch of cities that's about to burn down right now, because they just showed us that, our lives don't in fact matter. So accountability is one thing, but it's going to take more than just the verdict. I think that this showed that there has to be systemic change. You know what I'm saying? That at some point, enough is enough. And so I'm glad that it happened, but I don't think that this is going to be what that magic pill that we thought it may be.
Well,
yeah. No, I'm sorry.
No, go on, Quinny. I'm about to close out, but go ahead.
Oh man, because I was about to bring up Makia Bryant. So I guess we don't have time to
be
talk
another
about.
Show. That's that's a whole nother show.
Because the officer pulled the gun out immediately. So, but that's neither here nor there.
But that situation, that does need to be another show, because there's a lot of factors in that situation that need to be talked about and brought out. I haven't looked at it all. I've seen bits and pieces and heard about it, but I do think that there's other factors that need to be, because I think some of them adults should be, so. But we are to the end. Like I said, we always go over our time. With that said, we are at the end of the show with the Rest My Case. This was a great topic. This was a great conversation. Thank you again for being on the show. So, Shonda, what we do at the end of the show was Rest My Case. So whatever you want to lay to rest, it doesn't have to necessarily be legal or about what we're talking about. It could be about like anything that's going on that you're tired of hearing about and you just want it to go away. So Quentin has been a part of our show, so he knows exactly what we're talking about. So I'm going to start with Sam. Sam, you got to rest my case today?
I do. I have a personal rest my case. So this weekend, my mom and I, we went home shopping, and we went to this one new subdivision, and we were, you know how they have the office, the home builders offices, and we walked up, and there was like, we looked in at first and nobody was in there, and there were two offices there. So we went to the other side, we talked to another office, and we came back, and we knocked on the door, and we thought that no one was in there, and my mom like looked in to maybe see if there was like a sign that said we'll be back, and it was a woman who was non-Black hiding behind a wall that we could see her, that she just did not want to open the office. And then we called the builders office and we said, hey, we're trying to view a home. There's a woman literally hiding behind a wall where we can see her. And she said, oh, well, I wish I was there because I could show you the home. The reason why she didn't open the office is because she has one home left and, the subdivision is not really available. And the other office we went to, actually, a woman, before we could even say what we were looking for, told us that it's only one house left. And then we drove around the subdivision and it was an open house that she didn't mention. And I went back and she said, oh, well, you guys said you were moving in August. We hadn't said one word. And she told us that it wasn't available. So I will be filing a formal complaint. However, my case is I am sick of racism. I've had it. I was almost at my breaking point only because to watch my mother be so disheartened when she was looking to purchase a home. These are not thugs. Even if they were buying a home, it shouldn't make a difference. But we were not thugs. We were two women who hold 2 degrees, who drove up and wasn't trying to rob the place, dressed, professionally. Not that we should have to be. Let's say that. But I'm just sick of it. And I'm at the point now, if you are non-Black and you don't call out racism, you're a racist. Okay? I think Shannon Sharp said, if you have Black friends and you don't speak up for the things that you see that are wrong, you don't have Black friends. Those are not your friends. So if y'all want to say we're in this together, if you want to be an ally, it's time that everybody call things out. I'm sick of it. And that's my rest my case.
Tari, you got to rest my case?
Oh, you want me to go behind that?
Yep.
I was going to say, and what Sam said, but yeah. So we have the guilty verdict on this case, and we all know that the family of George Floyd won a civil suit as well. And I know that everybody wants to know what they're going to do with that money and how they're going to spend all $27 million minus the attorney's fees and case expenses. At the end of the day, I think that they would give the money up if George Floyd was still here. Mm-hmm. And so instead of being worried about who's going to get money or who's not going to get money or how they're going to spend it or what they're going to do with it, a life is still taken. A life is still no longer here. And I think his life was still worth more than $27 million. And until officers and the cities and the governments take charge of this and realize that our lives, our brothers, our fathers, our husbands, our sons' lives are more important than a few $1 million they can throw around, there really won't be any change.
Quentin?
Man, y'all got real deep. I was going to talk about something extremely selfish.
Go ahead.
No, the fact that I agree with Sam's rest of my case, that was great because we never agree apparently. But I totally agree with her. One thing that's frustrated me just as an attorney, have my practice now. This is year 14. I'm blessed. I thank God that I've been able to operate and own my own business for that long and do pretty well. I get frustrated sometimes when people, and I mostly cater to people that are of Black or African American descent. That's the majority of my practice. That's not all of my clients, but that's the majority of my practice. And I often say that I am a defender of young Black males. That being said, one thing that's frustrating to me is there are oftentimes a higher expectation that's placed on us as Black professionals that I believe may not be placed on our counterparts. And I think that's, I can even understand the thinking sometimes because there's this assumption that the service that we provide is subpar. And I'm frustrated with that because I don't have a whole lot of clients. And so the ones that I do have, I put blood, sweat, and tears into. And I try to communicate with them often, and I often see them The client attorney relationship with me and my clients is a very personal one. And so I'd like to lay to rest this idea that Black business is substandard, subpar, and that Black people ought to treat us differently or have a different expectation with us. Don't want to accept our fees, want to pay late, do different things of that nature. I just think that we need to support the Black economy. That's extremely important. That's something that other cultures have been able to do. I understand why we don't do it as well as we could, because we really don't understand what our culture is. We see each ourselves as Black, although that there's many, many more dynamics that go into that. But I just think that we need to be more supportive of each other as business professionals. And so I like to lay to rest this idea that one, our business is substandard, not up to par with those of our counterparts. And I'd like for us to make a strong effort to support Black business, be patient with Black business, because we are dealing with some things that others aren't dealing with, and just more understanding.
And guess what? You now get to come back for 2 different episodes because of your lay to rest.
Because we're going to talk about what you just said.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You
and
definitely.
then also just ask yourself, to piggyback off that, would you want to have yourself as a client? We are professionals. This is not a garage sale. We don't have them. Okay. You don't go to the doctor and try to negotiate your copay.
Right. At all.
Shonda, what's your rest my case?
I think that mine kind of goes with what everyone has said. One of the ways one of the models for my life, I guess you can say, or the things that I live by, is to treat other people the way you would want to be treated. And so that's kind of how I run my practice. I see, people that look like us, that they're already disrespected on a certain level. But then once they're facing criminal charges, it's a whole other level of disrespect. Like they just, treat us like we are nothing. And so because of that, I go in and I try to talk to, my clients the way that I would want somebody to treat me, the way I would want somebody to represent me. Or if my children got in trouble, I try to go that extra mile because of the fact that I know that it's important. And I'm kind of, like Attorney Brooker here is, I put that extra work in for the simple fact that, we need it. We go that extra mile, we do what we need to do. And so my thing that I want to, rest my case on is treat other people the way that you want to be treated. If you don't want to be looked at differently because of your race or your gender or whatever the case is, make sure that you're putting forth that same energy when you're dealing with other people. And I think that would kind of fix a lot of the issues that we're having. And then especially, Sam was like, would you want yourself as a client? You know what I'm saying? It's like, treat me the way that you would, if you had your own business, treat your attorney the way that you would want to be treated. Give them that same respect, pay your bills on time, make sure that you're doing what you need to do so that I don't have to worry about haggling you about your money. I can worry about your case. So I always try to make sure that I tell little tips like, hey, this is how a good way for you to deal with your case. Or this is a good way to deal with your attorney, because sometimes people don't know. So I rest my case on just treat everybody the way you would want to be treated. Do things for people that you would want done for you, and move in the spirit. If there's something that is on your heart to do it, because that is being put on you for a reason. So that's
you better preach.
Okay, give us a word tonight.
Yes, that was a good closing argument.
See, I had to rest my case, but I actually have a rest my case tonight.
What?
Mine is more lighthearted. What I want to say is, on my rest my case, Google lawyers, social media lawyers. I want to tell y'all to do y'all research when you post your legal advice on social media, but you can't because you don't have a law license. You didn't go to law school. So listen, find you another industry because y'all killing me. And on that note, thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of No Further Questions. Again,
you don't like their advice that they be telling you?
Huh?
You don't like their advice?
Listen, Google can only take you so far.
My favorite one is it's unconstitutional. Constitutional only applies to the government trying to.
I'm gonna start telling people, can you go to texaslawhelp.org? What I was gonna say is, if you gonna Google and you in Texas and you giving legal advice before you start, go to texaslawhelp.org. because it is a great website created by lawyers that will help you provide advice to the masses on social media.
And supported by the Supreme Court. Okay.
Yes.
Girl, listen. Let me tell you what this girl tried to tell me. I said something that, this is a felony or such and such. She was like, no, it's not. I was going to say, listen, argue with the penal code because I'm not the I'm not
People
doing it with
try
you.
to argue me down what common law marriage is. Okay.
Yep.
We common law. Oh, okay. I'm common law. Nope. Not as long as he's still posting girlfriend. Y'all ain't common law.
Y'all ain't coming along. Just on that note, thank you, Shonda. Thank you, Quentin, for being on our show. It was a great conversation. It was a great analogy of everything. The criminal justice, civil lawyer, Taria, thank you for your insight on the $27 million to the family and how you broke that down. So tune in next time. You can follow us on NFQ Pod on Twitter, No Further Q on Instagram, and No Further Questions on Facebook. And Shonda and Quentin, real quick, we are out of time, but let them know where they can follow you and contact you for legal representation. Shonda?
Go ahead, counsel.
Oh, Quentin. Oh, yeah. Shonda, go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can find me at parkerdefense.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Parker Defense. I believe it might be Parker_Defense now. I may have changed that to match my Twitter, which is also Parker_Defense. For my personal, IG, you can find me at Mother-in-Law on Instagram and Parker Defense on Instagram as well. So lots of legal tips and advice, and then just kind of everything to kind of let you know how we're trying to handle being a mother, being a lawyer, being a wife, and all of that all in one. And trying to give as much advice as we can and insight.
Well, you make it look easy, girl.
Right.
Thank you.
Quentin, where can they find you?
Thank you so much for the shout out. My website is qb-law.com, qblaw.com. Instagram and Twitter are at qblaw. Facebook is Quentin Brooker, attorney at law. And I do have offices located in the Sharpstown area of Houston, Texas. Call me for a free consultation. We'll set you up. Do it virtually, do it in person, however you like to do it. I'll do my best to represent you.
Well, thank you again, and we are out.
Bye, y'all.